Okay, so I thought it would be a good idea as we make the transition from the previous screencast video lecture on Marx's labor theory of value, also referred to as the surplus theory of value, to visit a couple of concepts that are fundamental and will help you to understand many of the other concepts and theories in Marxism. And they're relatively straightforward and easy to understand. And it might be a good time to visit these concepts, discuss them for a little bit, and just take a break from some of the more heady stuff, some of the more intellectually demanding or exacting aspects of Marxism, like, for instance, the labor theory of value. Okay, so use value. What is use value? Well, it's for starters, it's an aspect of a commodity. And for our purposes, a commodity is basically two things. It's use value plus exchange value. And I'll talk about exchange value in a few minutes. But for first, let's talk about use value. So, use value, this aspect of a commodity, right? It refers to what it is that commodity does. This is a commodity right here. This glass. It does something. It holds my soda water, right? Which is also a commodity, right? All commodities have a history. However, when we buy commodities, when I buy this watch, when I buy this foosball, I, like the vast majority of people, am not conscious, nor am I terribly concerned about where it is that that commodity came from. That's just the way that the capitalism conditions us to behave, think, feel, and desire. It just doesn't cross most people's mind, because if it did, capitalism probably wouldn't function as efficiently as it does. Uh, and so Marx is rather exceptional and extraordinary amongst human beings, uh, you know, for all time, and in his particular time, in as much as he seemed to be fiercely curious about uh, the history of commodities. Where is it they come from? How is it they come into existence? Uh, how much they cost? And the process whereby things like cost, or I'll talk to you about in a moment, exchange value, actually mean. Uh, Surplus value, in other words, profits. Where do profits come from? And how does the bourgeoisie rake in such enormous profits off of the backs of the labor of the working class? And so he starts by focusing on very particular, um, what should be obvious things, right? And so he focuses on a commodity, where it is produced, which is to say in the sphere of production, which is an aspect of the base, if you'll recall, right? It's one of two aspects of the base. First, the sphere of production. Second, the social relations of production. Okay, and when he looks at the sphere of production, where it is that the commodities are produced, uh, he thinks of a commodity as something that provides a certain degree of utility. Commodities do things, right? Uh, he's thinking about what a commodity is used for. And another way to be able to think of a use value is, an object of utility produced by capitalist economic systems. Or, to put it a little bit fancier, but maybe a little bit more precise, labor power, right? The work, the actual energy that's put into work, um, of the working class, infused into matter or natural resources. So, a commodity is, partly a use value, which is, say, an object of utility. How does it come to be? Labor power, the working class infuses its energy, right, and its know-how and its skill into the process of transforming matter or natural resources into commodities. So the second aspect of a commodity, exchange value, pretty straightforward. It's the price. So I have price written in bold here. So what is exchange value? You could simply say it's the price of a commodity, or refers to the price of a commodity, or is the price that is assigned by the bourgeoisie or ruling class to a commodity before it is sold on the capitalist marketplace. Or alternatively, you could say it's the amount of money a consumer pays in order to purchase a commodity. So a consumer uses his or her hard earned money uh, to purchase or pay for a commodity. In exchange, that person gets a commodity, hence exchange value. Now, again, in order to understand the surplus theory of value or the labor theory of value, and also to ultimately understand how it is that what is referred to as a superstructure emerges from the base, it is extremely helpful to be able to understand how to calculate surplus value. Now, I have this equation here. Now, if I ask the question, how do you calculate surplus value? This would do, right? It would help to have some more details, but this would do. I mean, as long as you have this memorized for starters, that's. I'm not expecting much more than that, at least on a quiz or an exam. So, surplus value. It refers to profit. So take a particular business, say, for instance, a business that produces foosballs, and that's the only thing that they focus on, right? And so they produce, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of foosballs a year, and that's their specialty. Business cycle lasts 6 to 12 months. So let's just say it lasts a year. In order to calculate how much profit that particular company makes, you're going to want to add up how many of these foosballs that particular company actually sold within a business cycle, which is, say, a year. Say they did 100,000, and they sell them for $5 a pop, right? Uh, and so $5 times the amount of foosballs or commodities that you sell. That's net or total exchange value. In order to calculate profit, you have to subtract from net exchange value the cost of production. I put an acronym here, COP. So what goes into the cost of production? So first of all, the cost of the machines that produce this particular foosball. Machines plural. There are probably a lot of different things that go into producing a foosball. A lot of machinery, a lot of know-how. It's surprisingly difficult and challenging to produce something like this in vast quantities and still make a profit, right? Which is to say, keeping the cost of production as low as possible. So machines, you have to pay, for example, rent for the property that the factory or the production facilities are located. It takes the burning of fossil fuels to produce one of these foosballs. To run the machine, so you have to pay for electricity, and then also amongst many other things that I'm not even aware of that goes into actually producing a foosball. You have to pay your laborers, your employees, wages. Okay, and according to Marx, if you look at the history of capitalist societies, and he's looking at the history of capitalist societies in the 19th century, and his main object of study is England, which was like the world's largest empire, right? So it exported capitalism all around the world, and a very very rich object of study for somebody like Karl Marx is trying to understand the dynamics of capitalism and the logics whereby it operates. Uh, Wages typically are roughly equal to the cost of subsistence, which is to say, precisely how much money is required to reproduce the labor power of the working class, right? The bare minimum, the necessities of life, rent or shelter, okay, uh, food, uh, so that a body can come to work, expend energy doing the various tasks that one is paid a wage to do, right? And so the capitalist, in order to make a profit, in order to remain competitive, has to reduce the cost of production as much as possible to generate surplus value. And in capitalism, it tends to be the case that the people who, or the bosses, the people who own companies, who are the most innovative, smart, shrewd, and brutal in the ways that they keep the cost of production low, including depressing wages, those tend to be the businesses or corporations, industries that survive and thrive. Okay, so in order to gain or produce tremendous amounts of surplus value, it is absolutely incumbent upon the capitalists or the bourgeoisie living in a competitive capitalist society and economic system. It's imperative that they keep the cost of production as low as possible to keep surplus value or profits up. Okay, and so once a company is profitable, uh, the best companies, industries know how to invest that money. Okay. And part of the money that successful businesses and corporations and industries invest after they have their profits at the end of a business cycle, right? Uh, a lot of that goes into the superstructure, which is kind of an insurance policy for maintaining and reproducing the power, which is to say the political and economic interests of the bourgeoisie, so they can continue to profit from the capitalist system, right? And to profit from the immense value that the working class produces on their behalf in exchange for a wage that is more or less equal to the cost of subsistence.